I see a few of us out there. Hello there. My name is Madeline Nickley, and welcome to FM Fact versus FM Myth, our wonderful roundtable at World Workplace today. So as I said, my name is Madeline Nickley, and I am IFMA's marketing team lead for membership, and I'll be your moderator today. And I'm going to introduce our wonderful facilitators shortly, but I want to cover just a few housekeeping items as we get started. Please turn your cameras on so we can all see each other. So this experience will be as close to being in person as possible. And I see a lot of you already have your mics muted. That's wonderful. Please keep them muted until you're joining the conversation. This session is being recorded for posterity. So please be aware that it is being recorded and will be shared later so that we can go back and check it out, get all those bits and pieces of the conversation. Additional content on this topic can be found in IFMA's Knowledge Library, and there's a link to this to this content on the World Workplace Roundtable webpage where you signed up for the Roundtable. If you need a link later, let me know. This Roundtable is meant to be interactive, informal, and organic, so let's have some fun. If there are any polling questions, probably the easiest way to let us know what your reaction is that there's a reaction button kind of to the bottom right of your screen. So if you want to say yes to something, just hit that little smiley face and react. And with that, I want to go ahead and announce our facilitators. Without further ado, all of our facilitators today are partners and friends of IFMA and esteemed FM thought leaders. We're very happy that they were able to join us today. So first, I'd like to introduce you to Michael Savitt of East Longmeadow, Massachusetts. He is a national field sales manager for Excel Dryer, which helps manufacture the #1 selling accelerator hand dryer. For nearly 8 years, Michael has helped thousands of facilities create hand drying solutions for their restroom environments with touchless, hygienic, and sustainable products. Nice to see you, Michael.
Hi, everyone.
Next, I would like to introduce Don Ricker. He is a strategy director and consumer goods practice leader for Gensler, headquartered in Detroit. His research and work with global consumer goods companies leading their return to work strategies brings firsthand understanding of how and what organizations are planning and to successfully return to the new workplace now and in the future. So hi, Don. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Last but certainly not least is Federico Garcia Parra. He is head of global strategic accounts and customer advisory board chair at Otis Elevator Company. He is responsible for fostering relations with the company's key global customers, strategic partners, and leads Otis's customer advisory board to engage key stakeholders and support corporate goals. Federico, hello.
Hello, everybody. Excited to be here with you. Thank you for joining.
Well, let's get the show on the road because we do have a wonderful 30 minutes together today. So, Michael, let's start with you. What would you say, to get the conversation started, is the biggest myth about hand dryers and why there's so much misinformation about their safety?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think really for us, the biggest myth about hand dryers is that they're not hygienic and safe to use. And really to correct those myths and educate the public, researchers at the University of Arizona recently conducted a study that was ultimately published in the Journal of Applied Microbiology to really answer two questions. Are hand dryers more hygienic than paper towels? And are paper towels safer than hand dryers relative to human infection risk? And ultimately what the study found is that hand dryers and paper towels were found to be equally hygienic. And in addition to that, the study also found that there was no empirical data to support one hand drying method over another from a health and safety perspective. So today, certainly proper hand hygiene is critical now more than ever. And both the World Health Organization and CDC have said that hand dryers and paper towels are safe, effective ways to dry hands.
Excellent. So speaking of the pandemic and all the changes it has surely brought, Federico, would you like to weigh in on kind of what's going on since the outbreak of COVID-19, on how you've been supporting FMs and major corporations worldwide in designing safe and healthy reentry strategies into their workplaces?
Yeah, well, since the beginning of the pandemic, we've been working from around the world with different customers and FMs, and as we've seen, you know, the pandemic has evolved in very different phases, right? Being China, the first, you know, or Asia, the first geographical area around the world when it started, and that allowed us actually to learn a lot from the experiences, you know, since we have a global footprint on learnings on the and not only that are related to the vertical transportation from our perspective, but also other very innovative ideas that the building users were actually, or facility managers were actually implementing, right? From the vertical transportation itself, we categorize that in 5 main, you know, verticals, which would be touchless solutions, communications, healthy product, remote monitoring, and social distancing. But in terms of facts and myths, I think today what I would like to ask actually, and you know, exchange with this panel today is, we've actually been hearing a lot that you know, in terms of as a fact that the fact of having to use an elevator when you're going back to or resigning, you're returning to the workplace in a safe way strategies, the elevator journey is becoming really a major concern of tenants, and actually you know, they are communicating to the facility managers their fear to use the elevator because of their of the risk of transmitting, of getting contagious with the COVID-19 virus. But for that, we've commissioned an airflow study to Purdue University in order to understand what are the real risks of getting that transmission, and come out with some fact-based recommendations. And I will ask, and just to finish, I would like to ask the panel, okay, is this the case in their buildings? Are people really communicating to them that using the elevator is a threat, and that's stopping them from bringing people back to work?
Anyone like to share? Okay, good.
I will start. My name is Christy, and I manage Movement Mortgage. It's a mortgage company. So when the pandemic hit, we only have essential folks in our space that is not able to do their job. So in the South Carolina office, it's about 200,000 square foot of space. So right now we average about maybe 100 to 120 people that must be there. And at the beginning of the pandemic, we put up signage based on what we say is the amount of square footage a person can have. And we put up information related to the elevator, 2 per person. We haven't had anyone actually say they're not able to, or they feel uncomfortable using an elevator because there's a nearby open staircase. And in the first building, it's two cabs, and then we have one for freight. And in our other building, which is a 3-story building, it is just 2 cabs in the main hallway, and the rest of those stairwells are access control, but they can go up. But it's only 3 flights, so I know there may be other people that may have an issue of more flights, not having the option to take the stairs. We've had a couple people who had an HR accommodation that didn't feel comfortable riding the elevator, even if it wasn't with one other person. And we just gave them that option to take the freight elevator in that case. Like I said, it's not like we have that many people, so we can kind of case by case if they bring those up as a concern. But I think I got something recently from Otis. I haven't had a chance to look at it, about elevator and the quality of the air and things that can be done. So I was hoping to hear some information about that.
Well, thank you, Christy. What people really don't know, and we already knew before conducting this study, is that first by code, openings for ventilation are required for all elevators, and they're actually designed to have a high level of air exchange. And secondly, the exposure time is minimal due to a short average ride in the elevators. Even for the very high rise buildings, the average time within the cab is less than 2 minutes. So this is actually what we knew before we conducted that study. If the results or that you just heard, maybe what we just presented in the conference of tall building and urban habitats, the early findings of the study. And there are 4 main early findings until we have the final white paper and results that we will distribute also with IFMA at the beginning of next year, hopefully. First is that the high level of air exchange in an elevator lowers the risk of actually getting infected or contagion the virus. And an elevator ride is comparable to a short time in an office or a bus. Then second finding would be that a proper mask usage by all riders reduces the risks by 50%. Okay, reduction of around 33% if all riders do not wear the mask. The third finding would be that the use of air purification, like a needlepoint or bipolar ionization, what they call NVPI, can reduce risks between 20 to 30%. It depends, of course, on the ride time and riders' positions in the elevator. And finally, the proper mask usage by all riders combined with those, the use of those air purification solutions that I was mentioning can reduce relative risk 70 to 80%. So these are the early findings of the study that we just conducted.
All right. If we don't have any more questions for Federico for the moment, I do want to pass the baton to Don for a second, make sure we hear from him. What are some of the facts and myths about return to work strategies based on what key industries are planning?
Sure. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting time, right? Everything's changing and everything is continuing to change. I think a couple things to take note of, fact versus myth when it comes to gathering research and looking at data, right? There's a lot of surveys that have been done, those included inside of Gensler as well. We did a study back in April to kind of gather sentiment and understand what people's appetite for working from home was like. And that sentiment has continued to change. It's continued to change to the point where there's a greater increase now toward the desire to have some aspect of work from home. And that's really beginning to drive the strategies that organizations are starting to think about. So there's kind of 5 key strategies that we're finding out there. I'll call them emerging trends, if you will, right? Because like anything, the facts are you have to do the actual physical planning. You have to actually start testing it to determine how it's going to work. But it's no longer a one size fits all kind of a strategy. So there's kind of 5 out there that we're seeing. One of them is certainly a sort of a business as usual. There's an expectation that once there's a vaccine, we can simply return and nothing really has to change. We're seeing that primarily in the context of legal industries, right? Fairly conservative in that sense that everybody would go back, still have their offices. Then we are starting to see that hybrid approach, so that hybrid of having an office as well as having the ability to work from home. And that's really going to be structured. It's going to be structured by days of the week, months, times of the month, times of the quarter that people might come in. And you might find that through R&D facilities, people who have a really specific need and desire to be on site and can share that hybrid, as well as headquarters, right? Some administrative types of offices and things of that nature. Another model out there is really negating the idea of office for desking purposes and purely as a resource. So the office as a resource center, this idea that you can still use it for cultural and brand immersion. You can use it for recruiting purposes, teaching, training, mentorship, right? The things that we're lacking by working at home and not having contact with each other is that mentorment opportunity. And then you start to see a mix, right? This mix of a hybrid as well as a resource center. And that just creates some really unique and interesting ways to rethink about leveraging co-working spaces that might live in neighborhoods or other parts of the city. You might start to think of financial institutions who might start to re-leverage retail bank as a presence in a neighborhood, but use it as an office environment. So those with other holdings or the ability to think in kind of a hub and spoke model, if you will, definitely creates opportunity. And the last one is just no office at all, right? And we're seeing that primarily in the tech world. There's a couple that have committed to a no office solution, and they might borrow the idea of renting space as opposed to needing it full time. And why pay on the rent or a lease if you can use it for purposes? So the purposes might be social, they might be all staffs, they might be gatherings. So, and again, all of those are models, right? None of them are proved yet. None of them are final, but everything is leaning toward a shift. And for me, that's really exciting, I think, as a workplace strategist. I'd be curious to know from the panel if anybody's exploring any of these models, if there's challenges that you're seeing with any of them, and if so, what are some of those challenges we might be able to share or talk about today or do as a follow-up? No one wants to reveal the big answers, right?
I can chat about it, but I liked hearing about the emerging trends. We're kind of at this point that our company, we stretch between 3 states, and as far as Arizona, Virginia, and in South Carolina. So the struggle we have now, there are people that definitely want to come back in the office because they're tired of working from home. You know, their neck hurts, their back hurts, you know, they want to see people. So, but we have grown. The mortgage industry right now is insane. Since
Right.
I kid you not, we probably hired 300 to 400 people, and we decided to bring them in, do that little face-to-face, and then they go home. And then, like you said, one of your trends of doing the teaching and the coaching, they have some one-on-one training. We could still use our training portion, but as to 2021, I think having our executive or our C-suite leadership to determine what that will be is a difficult conversation to have, because people are doing so well working from home, outside looking in, of course, working from home, that we will have to change. And in my role, I need to have a couple of different suggestions based on those things you just mentioned. But the one I'm leaning toward is more hoteling seat for those who are not essential, that cannot do their job from home, and work in a hoteling situation, and show those parameters of how that cleaning will take place with shared desking. Because we do a lot, I mean, industry changes so much, there's a lot of teaching that's involved that cannot be done remotely, depending on your experience. So.
Thanks, Christy. It's great to know that you guys are open to exploring, because I think that it gets back to sentiment, right? Your employees' sentiment is focused on their own personal health, wellness, mindfulness, and this opportunity in one way that's been created with the pandemic, which is creating a better quality of life by being at home in some cases. So I don't think many people want to lose the positives. So how do you create the situation where we can still bring people in for the things that they are missing out on, right? That social interaction, that cultural engagement, that teaching and training, and being able to know that you're part of something. And that, I think that's like the workplace has to have a purpose for the future beyond just a desk, right? Beyond a place to plug in and do the job, because we can kind of do that from home. So yeah, it's exciting. It's an exciting future, but it's a hard thing to figure out right now. So again, there's a lot of models floating. There's a lot of data that you can look at and gather from. But if we want to connect offline, there's definitely trends within mortgage, financial, call center type applications that we could talk about in detail.
Yeah, I would like that. I'll connect with you later too.
I have a question here. I mean, to the panel. I mean, do you think that previously working from home, could be perceived as lower productivity, and I think my perception is that now through the outbreak, we've shown, or it has been demonstrated, that that myth of you have to be physically in the office in order to be productive is kind of it's going down, and we've through the organization we've been able to build a trust thanks to the pandemic that that we can actually be productive by working from home or remotely. Do you agree on this, or?
I have to say that I agree with that. Until recently, I was involved with energy management for 147 Army Reserve Centers across 9 states. And at the headquarters at Fort Jackson in Columbia, South Carolina, 90% of our people were working remotely from home. I was very blessed to have a home office in my house when I bought it last year. And I think my productivity was very, very high because everything I did was for more in the management, scheduling, process, project management type end of things. And it really depends on your job function. We have people out in the field that have to go into those buildings to do audits and inspections and maintenance and so on. Obviously, that can't be done virtually. That being said, technology does open the door for more remote reading and monitoring of systems, but it's very slow, and especially even slower in the military.
Which is actually in the elevator industry, if I speed up the leverage or the delivery of the IoT, the Internet of Things, and all this, and what we call in Otis, we have the Otis One, which is all these devices, sensors where we monitor the status of the key components of the elevator remotely, and in some cases we can actually, do some fixings remotely with the elevator, or of course do preventive maintenance and avoid visits to the sites.
Richard, if I could expand on something you mentioned, which I think is important. That's a lot of the work that we're doing right now gets to the level of what we call workflow. So the workflow based on a department or a division is very different inside of an organization. And so there's definitely an opportunity, right, to look at it through the lens of the actual work that's getting done, to understand what's going to work best. Is it continuing to work from home? Is it to be partly on site? And it's at that activity level, it's at that workflow level, and how that whatever business unit or department or team has to deliver whatever it is they're responsible for. That's what drives the why working from home or why working in an office is going to be most effective and efficient, right? So I think it's interesting, that you pointed that out, that you have to look at that detail, because it's not a one size fits all. We can't make one blanket statement. And we're in that moment in time where it's really going to focus on the work and the work of the future.
Right, I agree with that. And maybe we can connect after this through LinkedIn or something and have some other discussions.
For sure.
Right now, I've got a very intensive schedule. I'm trying to get ready for the PMP exam on the 29th of December.
Oh, good luck.
So, oh yeah.
You're busy, man.
Well, I decided it was a good time to transition into consulting, and being in Columbia, I'm in a good place to hit a lot of the southeastern cities. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, right.
Fortunately, unfortunately, we're down to our last about 6 minutes. You guys are cooking with gas in this roundtable. While we're at it, I wanted to bring up a question from our audience. Maxine Morrison had asked, in terms of FM myths, FM partnering means loss of jobs, control, and higher operating costs. Why are Canadian organizations like healthcare and education reluctant to use third-party IFM modeling? Anyone care to take that? Maybe not. Maybe that's a thinker.
That's a thinker. Let's come back to that one afterward.
Come back to that. Okay. Well,
I still think you need to find the right subject matter experts for your arena. People have knowledge, and you need to be open to the idea of them having that knowledge. I'd rather see a project done right and done safely than necessarily have it be a true moneymaker. But of course, financing and saving money on the bottom, is part of the bottom line. But it goes back to, what is your purpose and what is your drive and your focus?
I like it. I like it. All right. I want to bring it back to Michael for a minute and see what your thoughts were on what myths are out there that have kind of affected organizations globally. What are things that you're seeing kind of be a common thread?
Absolutely. No, great question. And I think, really in general for facility managers right now, they're really focused on across the entire facility, providing touchless hygienic solutions. So certainly as we've seen the restroom environment evolve over the years from, people having to touch the door handle, having to touch the soap dispenser, the faucet, the hand dryer, it's all about touchless now. And I think, if facilities can make that commitment to making a transition from a push button to an automatic hand dryer, especially maybe one that has a HEPA filtration system, that would remove 99.999% of viruses from the airstream, that helps ease the mind of users who are going into that restroom environment and are worried about those touch points. So I think we're going to continue to see organizations want to make that transition and really make their environments more touchless, if you will.
Hey, and just Mike, just to support support what you're saying there, that's something that we at Gensler, we started looking at early on, was in the methods of planning the physical restroom. Like, how can we create that barrier-free, touchless experience from everything to the doors, to the stalls, to dryers, etc. So I think the technology mixed with space is so important to the future of safety. And I hate to call it the airport experience, but it's kind of that idea, right? That how would you structure an office environment where there were no doors on the restroom? So that there's still privacy, but it's an interesting challenge. And I'd say the same thing about touchless when it comes to collaborative technologies and collaboration styles in the office environment. The desire for everyone to control the only thing they touch, perhaps being their phone, as a piece of surface technology to turn things on, to turn things off, to access. Those are a lot of the trends that we're seeing kind of at that level of implementation, which creates a whole technology layer for our friends in facilities. How are we going to get the right system and the right platforms and the right devices to work that way, if that's the real future?
That's actually also what we're seeing from our side, right? Customers asking more for seamless experience, how we can integrate also through we have actually an app called Otis, that in order to place elevator codes without having to touch the buttons, again touchless, and we are working on integrating that with other functions of or available in the building, like access control with the APIs, and we can integrate them. So yeah, that's actually the trend and what's been asking more and more by customers globally.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, in our last few minutes here, boy, time has flown by. Are there any more burning questions any of you guys have, or even for our facilitators, any last bits of knowledge and advice you'd like to share? Burning questions, going once? Okay, how about just burning bits of information from our facilitators?
I think for me, the last thing I would share real quickly is, I know obviously there's a lot of reopening guidelines that are being put out there by different organizations. So I think it's important to pay attention to those, but also to look to other independent third-party sources. I know for us, we spend a lot of time talking to the CDC to make sure their guidelines are very clear with regards to hand dryers, the usage of hand dryers. So it's important to look at a lot of different sources when you're deciding about how to reopen your facility safely.
I would echo that. Just as you're gathering research and data and understanding perhaps what others are doing, look at multiple sources. Don't go to one. I know Gensler, we host our own Gensler On blog, where there's a lot of great thought leadership topics, but there's plenty more out there. And I think if you do your homework, do your research, you'll pinpoint the things that are going to be right for you, because each industry, facility, and department has different needs.
And from my side, just to say that we help facility managers, and as I mentioned in the beginning, to design their the guidelines, so contribute to the guidelines and to design the safe re-entry strategies to workplace. And you can find that and we share that deck with the IFMA, and that's in the IFMA's library, and also we will be sharing the results of the airflow study I was mentioning, and it will be posted in that library.
Thank you, everyone. I have to jump. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming, and have a wonderful World Workplace for us today and tomorrow.
Take care. Thanks again.
Thank you.